Happy Friday to you fellas. This is what, at minimum, the second time that some of you are seeing me this week, which recently has been rare. And it's probably the third time you've heard my voice, if you include Monday's video when I did my response to those criticisms expressed by female PUA Kezia Noble. And matter of fact, I'll start right there for this video. First thing I want to talk about is some of the feedback I got from that response video. Just about everybody agreed with me that she blatantly lied about me. Yeah. Matter of fact, I don't know if I would say just about everybody. I would say everybody agreed that she lied. I don't know any person who commented in my comment section that was on her side when it came to her criticisms and accusations. To remind you, for those who might be watching this video that didn't yet watch the response video I did to Kezia Noble, I was interviewed by a guy on Wednesday by the name of Alex Vilenchik. Vilenchik. Alex Vilenchik. And about 2.5-3 weeks ago, he had interviewed Kezia Noble, who's arguably the world's most well-known female pickup artist and dating coach. And she had made this accusation. She made at least 2 to 3 accusations against me. One, she claimed that I had set her up, that I invited her to have just, a normal standard interview. But in reality, I was trying to get her to engage in an episode of hot, kinky phone sex. That's not true. And anybody who listened to both the original interview and the archive knows that's not true. So that's the number one thing that wasn't true. Secondly, she said I had edited the interview to make it sound like she was more into the conversation than she really was, and more specifically, that she was more aroused by the conversation than she really was. That wasn't true. I didn't edit the video to manipulate her voice or words to sound like she was more into the conversation than she really was. So that was proven to be bullshit. And then the third thing was she had accused me at some point in the interview of telling my listening audience something to the effect of, doesn't Kezia sound horny, or doesn't Kezia sound like she's playing with her pussy? If you listen to that audio clip I included in Monday's video, you'll see I never said that. At no point in that audio portion that I played on Monday's video did you hear me say something like, Kezia, I know for a fact I got you horny, or I know for a fact you're playing with your pussy. I never said anything like that. I never said anything like that. And, but she lied and tried to suggest that I did. Matter of fact, I found an old tweet that she posted from 2012, like a week or two after our interview. And she basically was telling her followers and supporters to go listen to the interview, check it out. She said, we talked about a lot of interesting things. Please go listen to it. Why would she post that tweet if the interview made her feel uncomfortable? That don't even make sense. Why would she post that tweet if any portion of the interview left her feeling uncomfortable? So see, that's how you can tell she's lying. That's how you can tell she's lying, man. That's why, so to give you the quick recap, and I'm going to move on. I'm not going to belabor this point. But here's what happened, man. And I explained this on Monday's video. But what happened was, about 2 or 3 weeks after I conducted that interview, which was in late October of 2012, I took some portions from the interview, about I think it was at least 3 10 to 15 minute excerpts from the interview, and uploaded it right here on YouTube. And on one of the excerpts, one of the more highly sexual excerpts, a lot of her own male followers and supporters, not my male followers and supporters, but her supporters, came into the comment section and was like, oh man. Like, some of the guys didn't even like me. Like, there was at least 4 or 5 guys that posted comments like, man, I don't even like Alan Roger Currie, but I have to admit, it sounds like he was getting Casey's pussy wet. Yeah, I think Alan Roger Currie is an egotistical jerk, but I got to give him credit. It sounds like he had Casey's pussy wet. And then one guy specifically asked me, he said, Alan, since you tend to brag that you can read women's body language and read their vocal energy, he said, just by talking to her in that interview, in your best estimation, do you think you had her aroused or not really? And I replied back, I said, there's no way of me knowing for sure, since I wasn't, face to face with her. But I said, more than likely, I said, yeah, she was probably hot and bothered at different portions of that interview. Then I put LOL. And then what happened was, she saw that reply comment of mine, and she wrote me on Facebook. And she said, Alan, I don't appreciate you suggesting that you had me horny and you had me touching myself. And I said, oh, calm down. Quit getting all bent out of shape. I said, the comment I wrote was lighthearted. I was basically like, quit tripping. Then she went on her Facebook timeline and made this big deal to her followers and supporters. She said, Alan Roger Currie, dating coach Alan Roger Currie, did not have me horny during that interview. He did not have me touching myself. He did not have me on the verge of touching myself. I would never masturbate during an interview. That would be so unprofessional, and something to that effect. And then I wrote her again. I said, Casey, really? Like, really? I said, you really taking this shit serious? What's the big deal? I think for her it's an ego thing, man. She didn't even want to give off the impression that I had any type of seductive influence over her, is what it was. And anyway, I think that's ultimately what led to her making those comments on Alex's video. Well, interesting enough, Alex, he edited out that part in the original interview. So you can't even find it on his page anymore. His interview of Casey Noble, he edited the portion you see in Monday's video. He actually edited that out. He actually gave me an apology. Because if you listen to that clip, you can tell that Alex was more or less siding with her side of the story. He was believing her side of the story. And then he watched my response video, and then he offered an apology where he basically said, hey, Alan, it was my bad for automatically believing her side of the story. I should know that there's 2 sides to every story. So he said, as a result, I'm going to actually take that clip out. I'm going to take that portion where she's criticizing you out of the interview. But actually, I told him, I said, you could go ahead and keep that in, because if you really listen to the clip, she's really simultaneously criticizing me and complimenting me. She's criticizing and complimenting me. She criticized me for all the reasons I mentioned, but the compliment she gave me, she said, even though I don't like Alan Roger Currie, she says, when it comes to erotic dirty talk, she was like, that man knows what he's doing. Yeah, she was like, that man knows what he's doing. She said, she told the guys who were listening to the interview, she said, if you want advice on how to be better at talking dirty to women and verbally sexualizing a conversation, she said, Alan Roger Currie is the man you want to go to. So I appreciate her giving me that compliment. So, she gave me a mix of criticisms and a compliment. But anyway, enough on her. Now, second thing I want to talk about, speaking of Alex, is my interview on Wednesday with Alex. It went a lot longer than I anticipated, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because I had told him originally I was only willing to do a 90-minute interview with him, and he ended up interviewing me for roughly about 2.5 hours. So it went roughly a little over an hour longer than I had originally anticipated. Most of my followers and supporters who listened to the interview said that they enjoyed it, but I had 2 or 3 guys that did have some criticisms, and I want to address those. One criticism I received is at least 2 or 3 guys said, "Alan, why did you choose to do that interview with that guy Alex? Alex seems like a conventional PUA who mainly emphasizes indirect verbal game." They were like, "Alan, if you look at some of his older videos, he's not really a direct verbal game guy. He's more of an indirect verbal game guy. So I'm surprised that you allowed him to interview you, because I know you have major philosophical disagreements with indirect verbal game." Well, my response to that is I almost have mixed feelings on that criticism and comment. See, I don't know, to be truthful, I don't know much about Alex. I don't know much about him. I didn't do any really extensive research on him before I agreed to be interviewed. Initially, honestly, I wasn't even going to do the interview. When he first wrote me, inviting me to do an interview, I wasn't really interested. Honestly, over half of what made me interested in doing the interview was when one of my followers sent me that clip of Casey and Noble criticizing me. And then that's when I said, "Oh, I want to come on this show so I can, straighten that out." But then, after I did that response video on Monday, Alex pleaded with me not to bring up Kezia in our interview. So I didn't even talk about Kezia on Wednesday's interview. But that's the main reason why I accepted the invitation to do it, because I wanted to clear the air about Kezia's comments and criticisms. But yeah, I'll be honest, I did get kind of the impression from a couple of comments I saw posted. Like, if you go in the comment section, one guy did post a comment saying, "Alex, I'm confused because you've always taught us to use indirect verbal game openers with women. But based on that interview with Alan Roger Currie, it sounds like now you co-sign more with direct verbal game." So, because see, when he was interviewing me, he was giving me the impression that he uses direct verbal game far more than he uses indirect verbal game. But at least one of his followers in the comment section suggested otherwise. And a couple of guys, my own followers who are more familiar with him than me, wrote me suggesting that. They were basically like, "Alan, I don't know if you know the history of Alex, but he's definitely more of like a conventional PUA / indirect verbal game dating coach. He's not really about direct verbal game." I think he might be one of those guys that uses a hybrid of both. Remember on a video earlier this year, I said basically when it comes to verbal game, you have 3 types of dating coaches. You have some dating coaches that exclusively teach and encourage direct verbal game. Like the 2 guys most notable for that would be myself and the late great David X. We were known for teaching exclusively direct verbal game. Then there's a lot of conventional PUAs who teach and encourage nothing but indirect verbal game. Then there's some guys in the manosphere that teach basically a hybrid of both. They teach elements of both direct verbal game and elements of indirect verbal game. So I think he's in that third. I think Alex, the guy who interviewed me, is probably in that third category. I think he's one of those hybrid dating coaches and PUAs. What else? Feedback from that. Speaking of PUA, man, I generally enjoyed the interview, But one thing I was mildly a little bit irritated by, Alex, like most conventional PUAs, he uses a lot of PUA lingo and terminology like Kino escalation and calibration and masculine frame. See, I don't use, you notice when you watch my video, I don't use none of that shit. That's what's called conventional PUA terminology and lingo. I don't use none of that terminology in my videos or in my books. Like if you were to read my books or listen to my audiobooks, you never hear me talking about Kino escalation or calibration or holding and maintaining a masculine frame. I don't talk like that. That's conventional PUA talk. That was one of two things that, at least on a minor level, kind of irritated me during the interview. He was using a lot of conventional PUA lingo and terminology that I just don't use, man. I don't, that's not my thing, man. I don't use that PUA terminology and lingo, man. The other minor thing where we had a disagreement, I don't know if you remember, but about, I'll say roughly 2 years ago, I did a video that caused me and this other black male YouTuber named BGS Itmore to have kind of like this momentary exchange. Because when it comes to talking about the pills, one thing I noticed, man, is that a lot of people in the manosphere, they define the pills differently than other people. For example, what I generally define as red pill, some other people in the manosphere define as black pill, and vice versa. Like, for example, Alex, when he was interviewing me on Wednesday, 2 days ago, he was basically, the way he was describing and defining red pill is how I generally describe and define black pill. For example, if you watch most of my videos, when it comes to discussing like red pill, blue pill, purple pill, black pill, I generally define and describe black pill as guys who harbor a lot of bitterness, resentment, and misogynistic attitudes towards women. Yeah, I tend to define black pill guys as guys that are bitter and to some degree resentful or even hateful towards women because they've been cheated on by women a lot. They've been rejected and or ignored by a lot of women that they were attracted to. They've been financially manipulated by women and just generally treated like crap by women. See, I tend to define those guys as black pill. And the one web page that backs me up on that is Wikipedia. And I pointed that out before. That's how Wikipedia generally describes black pill. And I describe red pill as guys who are just very realistic about the nature of women, very accepting of the nature of women. They don't really have any bitterness towards women, any resentment towards women, any judgmental and or misogynistic attitudes towards women. Like if you read my book, No Free Attention, that's the one book of mine I talk about the pills. And that's how I define red pill. But anyway, Alex, he had it flipped. He was describing red pill as the bitter, resentful guys and black pill as the more objective-minded, realistic guys who just, accept women's nature. So that was one area of disagreement we had during the interview. So that was the only two things I had some degree of criticism for of the interview was, his general definition and description of black pill versus red pill and his insistence on using all that PUA lingo. Like at one point he was asking me, so Alan, do you calibrate with women before you're mode 1 or you calibrate with women after you're mode 1? And if you look at my face, I was looking like, man, I don't use that lingo. I don't use, I rarely, if ever, talk about calibration. And that's not even in my lingo. That's not part of my terminology. Another time during the interview, he was talking about maintaining a masculine frame. I don't talk like that. I'm not saying those aren't valid terms. If you're a conventional PUA, they're very valid terms, but I just don't use that shit, man. I don't use most PUA lingo. Anyway, overall, I would say I enjoyed the interview. Yeah, I enjoyed the interview. It was pretty good. Now, this is going to lead me to a segue to what I really want to talk about, which is the two other things I want to talk about before I end this video. One is related to PUA lingo. Somebody wrote in the comment section of that interview, they brought up this guy who goes by the name Black Dragon. I actually know who that is. I interviewed him on Blog Talk Radio. And we actually had a major philosophical debate during our interview. I remember. I interviewed him on Blog Talk Radio. In the one area we had a major debate. He's basically an indirect guy. He's an indirect verbal game dating coach. And he basically said that he doesn't mind going out on a date with a woman and engaging in a 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour conversation with a woman, even if it means not getting no pussy at the end of the date. And I basically was like, oh, I would never do that. At least if my objective is casual sex. Now, I've done that a few times if my objective was a woman. I wanted a woman to be my next long-term girlfriend or future wife. I can name a few times I've gone on a date, even 2 or 3 dates with a woman, and it didn't end up with us having sex. But for casual sex? Oh, no. I don't, again, for the millionth time, I don't even take women out on dates for casual sex. Like, never, ever. If my sole and specific objective is short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex, I don't go on dates with women. Like, never, ever. Starting with my early 20s up until now. I never, ever, 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 ever go on dates with women when I know ahead of time that my sole and specific objective is to engage in a few episodes of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex. The only time I go on dates with women is when I look at a woman as girlfriend / future wife material. That's the only time I go on dates with women. Anyway, in the comment section, this guy said, Caleb, aka Black Dragon, said that direct verbal game is not really beneficial for men because it provokes women to put up their ASD, which stands for anti-slut defense. Anti-slut defense. That's another PUA lingo term, ASD. A lot of conventional PUAs talk about women's ASD, anti-slut defense. I don't use that term in any of my books. Again, I don't use conventional PUA lingo and terminology in my books. So you ain't gonna find ASD, I don't think, in any of my books. But I understand the concept behind ASD, and I was just saying in real simple terms, that's the whole point of verbal seduction. That's the whole point of learning how to verbally seduce women. That's the whole point of improving your verbal seduction skills and erotic dirty talk skills, is to overcome a woman, what conventional PUAs would call a woman's anti-slut defense. I guess my equivalent term for anti-slut defense would be a woman's good girl voice. You always hear me talk about a woman's good girl voice, which I say is represented by her a white angel on her right shoulder, the voice of her social programming and cultural conditioning. See, that's what I consider what conventional PUAs would call a woman's anti-slut defense. I simply call a woman's social programming and cultural conditioning. Or a more simplistic way, I say a woman's good girl voice. And then I always say women also have a naughty girl voice. Their lustful naughty girl voice, which is metaphorically represented by a little devil on their left shoulder. That represents their hormonal desires and just their raw, natural, biological sexual impulses. That's what contributes to a woman's naughty girl voice. It's totally separate from her social programming and cultural conditioning. So anyway, I was reading this comment where somebody said that. They said, Caleb, aka Black Dragon, said that direct verbal game is not conducive to conquering a woman's anti-slut defenses. I would vehemently disagree with that. And if you've been paying attention to all my videos over the last 4+ years, you know my thoughts on that. Basically, it's simple as this. Here's the deal. Anytime you meet a woman that's either a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite, which is the two archetypes of women that are going to usually offer some type of what conventional PUAs would call ASD, anti-slut defense. There's two ways you can overcome it. One way is through verbal seduction and persuasion, or dishonesty and emotional manipulation. Those are the two general ways that any man is going to overcome a woman's ASD, again, using conventional PUA lingo, anti-slut defenses. Is if you're a fan of indirect verbal game, the number one way you're going to overcome a woman's anti-slut defense is by giving her the misleading, the disingenuous and misleading impression that you're open to being her next boyfriend or future husband. That's what indirect guys do to overcome a woman's ASD, is they use dishonesty and disingenuous and misleading and manipulative behavior to overcome it. In other words, in simple terms, what they do is they give women the disingenuous and misleading impression that they're open to the idea of becoming that woman's next long-term boyfriend and or future husband. That's what indirect verbal game guys do to overcome women's anti-slut defense. What direct verbal game guys do is they indulge in persuasion and seduction, which is what I do. Anytime I'm in the company of a woman who's a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite, I just unleash my A+ grade level, top tier level verbal seduction skills, persuasive charm and charisma, and kinky erotic dirty talk skills. And as y'all know, my nickname is the king of verbal seduction. I don't resort to lying to women and emotionally manipulating women in order to overcome their ASD. I consider that unethical. It's just like going back to Casey Noble for a second. If you listen to the interview, what did you hear her say? Remember I did a video, I think it was like 2, maybe 3 years ago, where I said, when it comes to getting women in bed, there's basically two types of guys. There's some guys who subscribe to the belief that the end justifies the means. The end justifies the means. Who among other people, who you think falls in that category, or at least used to fall in that category? I don't know about now, but I know he used to. I got to bring his name up again. Alpha Male Strategies. That's what helped Alpha Male Strategies first became popular back in spring, summer 2018. Alpha Male Strategies, when he was what I call the sleazeball gang version of himself, his attitude was this. Here's what he used to say repeatedly. AMS used to repeatedly say, hey man, I don't care about morals, values, and ethics. All I care about is fucking these hoes asleep. If that means lying to them to accomplish that objective, I'm going to do it. If that means misleading them and manipulating them to accomplish that objective, I'm going to do it. If that means toying with their emotions to accomplish that objective, I'm going to do it. He would say, I don't give a fuck what I need to do. He said, all I care about is fucking these hoes asleep, getting them in my bed and fucking these hoes asleep. And even though I disagreed with that attitude and belief in philosophy, I will say at least at minimum, I respected his honesty. I respect the fact that he was openly honest about the fact that he essentially had no ethics. I didn't agree with the attitude of having no ethics, but at least I respected the fact that he was honest about the fact that he didn't have any ethics. But that's the difference. I did a video where I talked about, I remember it was called something like the difference between ambition and ethics. The difference between ambition and ethics. And here's what I said. Here's how you measure a person's ambition. Ambition is represented by what a person is willing to do to achieve their most lofty goals and various objectives along the way. That's how you measure a person's ambition, is by identifying what is that person willing to do to achieve their most lofty goals and accomplish all the necessary objectives along the way. The number one way you measure a person's ethics, values, and ethics is by identifying what a person is not willing to do to achieve their most lofty goals and necessary objectives along the way. That's how you measure a person's ethics, is by identifying what they're not willing to do. So, for example, let's use money. If you're a guy who believes the end justifies the means, that means you'll be willing to rob a bank to become wealthy. You'll be willing to betray the trust of one of your close friends or relatives in order to become wealthy. You'll be willing to kill a motherfucker if you knew for a fact it was going to result in you becoming wealthier. That means you're ambitious. See, when you're ambitious, that means you're willing to do anything to achieve your goals. And say, for example, if becoming wealthier was your goal, ethics or values wouldn't play a part in that. If your end justifies the means type of guy, you don't care about morals, values, and ethics. All you care about is achieving whatever your desired goal is. Whereas when you're an ethical person, that means you only want to achieve wealth, greater wealth, within the parameters of your morals, values, and ethics. In other words, if you gotta do something illegal or highly unethical in order to achieve greater wealth, you'll be like, no, I ain't willing to do that. Like, I ain't willing to kill somebody in order to become wealthier. I ain't willing to betray the trust of a close friend, relative, or business colleague in order to become wealthier. I ain't willing to do that. That's what a person who has morals, values, and ethics. You're like, no, I ain't willing to do that. I ain't willing to murder somebody to become wealthy. And see, that's how I am when it comes to womanizing. That's what separates me from like 98, 99% of guys, other dating coaches and people. I've said this a number of times. I'm not willing to lie to a woman in order to score casual sex. I'm not willing to emotionally mislead and manipulate a woman, i.e. toy with a woman's emotions in order to score casual sex. I'm not willing to give a woman a misleading impression that I want to be her next long-term boyfriend or a future husband in order to score casual. I'm not willing to do any of those things. If that means, as conventional PUAs and indirect guys categorize that as leaving pussy on the table, if that means me leaving pussy on the table, then so be it. But I'm not willing to do it. I believe in ethical womanizing. I tell women straight up, all I want to do is casually fuck them. Every single woman that I've ever started with the age of 21 to now, every single woman I've had casual sex with, I told them up front and straightforwardly that all I wanted from them was casual sex. I made it very straightforwardly clear to them that I wasn't interested in being their next long-term boyfriend or future husband. I told them straight up, I just want to fuck you. Every single woman. I would challenge any woman I've ever had casual sex with to come forward and say, Alan Roger Currie lied to me and emotionally manipulated me to get me in bed. There's not one woman walking this earth who would be able to say that about me. Not one. Real talk, not one. So Casey Noble, she proved, she basically, you heard her say in that clip on Monday's video, she said, I tell my clients that they should be willing to do whatever it takes to get a woman in bed, to score casual sex. Even if based similar to AMS. She was like, if that means lying to a woman, if that means being dishonest, disingenuous, misleading, and manipulative, she was like, so be it. She was like, all I care about is that my clients get laid. She in so many words, she was basically like, fuck morals, values, and ethics. I don't give a fuck about that shit. And again, the vast majority of conventional PUAs and indirect verbal game dating coaches have that attitude. They don't care about morals, values, and ethics. I don't want to tell that story for the upteenth time from Las Vegas. You know I got a story to do with ethics where I broke this guy down in Vegas, but for time purposes, I'm not going to indulge in it. But I told it probably on at least 5 or 6 different videos. The last time I told it, I think, was in 2019. But there was this guy who tried to challenge me in Las Vegas in 2012 about the issue of ethics. He thought he was going to get the best of me in a debate. Man, I broke that motherfucker down. I humiliated him in front of all his friends and acquaintances. Humiliated him. He had to leave the table with his tail tucked between his legs. I broke him down so bad. Motherfucker thought he could debate me. I broke that motherfucker down. I said, you need to call the tow truck because I broke your ass down so bad. Motherfuckers be thinking they can beat me in a debate and I'll be shredding their ass. Who is fucking, ain't nobody shredded me in a debate related to Mode 1, ever. I dare anybody to say that they ever had, ain't nobody shredded me in a debate related to Mode 1. If it was related to some subject or issue that doesn't have to do with Mode 1, yeah, some guys might have said they might have got the best of me in a debate. But when it comes to any debate related that's directly, indirectly related to Mode 1, ain't a motherfucker ever faded me, ever. I'm talking about in the last 20 years, ain't a motherfucker ever faded me in a debate about Mode 1. I'll pay you $1,000 if you can say you faded me in a debate related to Mode 1. That's real talk. I've issued that challenge before. I said, I'll pay you $1,000 if you can say you faded me and prove it. Not just say you did, but prove that you did. Ain't nobody ever shredded me in a debate related to Mode 1. Ever. Ever. Ain't nobody ever shredded me in a debate. Anyway, this guy in Vegas, I'm almost tempted to tell the story again, but again, for time purposes, I'm not. But yeah, the guy thought it started with this guy saying, he said, I don't think, when it comes to getting laid, I don't think well, see, now I'm getting ready to tell us. I'm going to try to skip over Miss Lane. I'm going to tell the story again. Yeah, this guy in Vegas said, Alan, he said, I got your book, Mode 1, and there's a lot of things I like about it, but the one criticism I have of it is you're making the mistake of trying to implement morals, values, and ethics in the process of getting laid. And he said, when it comes to getting laid, ethics ain't got nothing to do with getting laid. And he had about 6, 7, 8 friends and acquaintances, business colleagues with him. And they was acting as his cheerleaders. At first, they was laughing at him and co-signing with everything he said, nodding their head like, yeah, Alan, I'm sorry, but this dude's right. And so I broke him down. I said, so ethics ain't got shit to do with getting laid. He said, nope, nothing, 0. I said, you sure about that? He said, nope, 0. I said, okay, why don't me and you go out today and find some 14-year-old girls to fuck. He said, 14 years old? Oh, I would never do that. I said, why not? You saying morals, values, and ethics got something to do with it? You got some age-related morals, values, and ethics? And he was like, well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of crosses the line, man, 14. I said, oh, so you got some morals, values, and ethics related to age then. Then I said, okay, let's use another example since you put an emphasis on age. I said, let's find 2 women that are 21 years old. And I said, while you talking to the women, I'll slip some date rape drugs in their drink and then we'll fuck them. He said, what? No, I don't want to put no drugs in their drink. That's unethical. I said, what did you say? He said, did he realize what he said? He said, well, that's just not right. I said, no, you said that's unethical. I said, I thought ethics didn't have shit to do with it. And I'm not going to go in any more detail in the story, but how it ended was, I said, motherfucker, you do have ethics. You might not have the same exact ethics as me, but you just proved in your responses that you do have ethics. You got age-related ethics. You got drug and alcohol-related ethics. Motherfucker, don't try to prove to me that you ain't got no ethics. If you're a motherfucker that ain't got no ethics, you'll do anything to fuck a bitch. You'll rape a bitch. You'll get her sloppy drunk and fuck her. You'll fuck a woman under 17 years old. You'll do anything to fuck a bitch if you ain't got no ethics. You can't be half a gangster, motherfucker. You can't be half a gangster. Either you a gangster or you not. Don't ever try to fuck with this brother right here about talking to me about ethics. If you truly didn't have any ethics, you'd do anything. You'd kill your own brother to fuck his wife. That's what you would do if you didn't have no ethics. So don't ever talk to me about fucking ethics, motherfucker, unless you're a true gangster. Unless you don't give a shit. Otherwise, shut the fuck up, man. You half a gangster. Ain't such thing as half a gangster, motherfucker. Shit. See, y'all had to get Rambo come out. Y'all made Rambo come out just a few seconds ago. I had to let Rambo out, my alter ego. But yeah, man, I had to let this dude know, man. Don't try to debate me about ethics, motherfucker. Either you got ethics or you don't. Either you got morals, values, and ethics, or you have none. Anyway, here's the final thing I want to talk about. I had a consultation with a client. And he said something interesting, but he's not the very first person to say this. He's not the very first person to say this, but yeah, we were having a consultation. And he said, at one point during our consultation, he said, Alan, I need you to help me because I recently went from mode 1 to mode 4. Now, if anyone owns my mode 1 books, I've always said you really can't go from mode 1 to mode 4. A lot of men transition from mode 2 to mode 4. And just as much, if not more so, a lot of men transition from mode 3 to mode 4. But I say in my books that it's next to impossible to transition from mode 1 to mode 4. So when he said that, that caught my ear. He said, yeah, I want you to help me. I'm dealing with the issue of going from mode 1 to mode 4. I said, okay, explain to me how you went from mode 1 to mode 4. I said, because for the most part, that's not even possible. And he said, well, it's like this, man. He said, there's this female friend of mine. It's a woman I've known for over a year. Let's call her Lisa. I said, okay. And he said, Lisa was this woman that I had always thought was this really wholesome, what you call the respectable good girl type. I thought she was the type of woman that would only have sex with a man who was her boyfriend, fiance, or husband. I thought she was very prudish, very strictly monogamy oriented. I thought she was the proverbial good girl. So that's why I never tried to get in bed, because I was always under the impression that she was a good girl. He said, but in the last couple weeks, I took a chance and I was mode 1 with her. And to my pleasant surprise, I ended up fucking her. And I was like, that's a good thing. I was like, where's the problem at? He said, man, it made me not like mode 1. That's what he said. Now, let's pause right there. When you think in that situation, that would make him become a stronger believer in the effectiveness of mode 1 and feel like he accomplished a goal? Believe it or not, but again, he's not the first person. There's been a handful of guys in what I call this rare category. I talked about one on a previous video who was also in this category. Yeah, in a nutshell, he dislikes mode 1, not because most people who harshly criticize and dislike my mode 1 approach is because they either assume that it won't help them get a woman in bed, or if they've tried it and it didn't. They tried it 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, and then it helped them get a woman in bed. Those are usually the guys who harshly criticize Mo 1 and say it's ineffective. It's either guys who assume that it's not going to benefit them as it relates to getting laid, or guys who've actually went out there and tried it and it didn't help them get laid. Even though I say in the book, that's not the number one objective of Mo 1 anyway, is to help you get laid, but that's another video for another day. But then you got some guys, a small percentage of guys, they dislike Mo 1 because it works, because it benefits. Like this guy, he basically said, Alan, he said, because I was able to get my friend Lisa in bed using Mo 1, he said, man, now I look at women different, man. He said, I ain't gonna lie, man. It's like now I look at all women as just sluts pretending to be good girls. He said, I used to look at some women as total good girls and other women as total. Didn't I just do a video about that about what, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago? I did a video about that when I was talking about the sexual duplicity of women. And I said, here's when you can tell that a man doesn't understand sexual duplicity, is when he looks at a percentage of women as being wholesome, respectable, strictly monogamy-oriented, prudish, good girls, and then he looks at another percentage of women as being just full-fledged, highly promiscuous sluts. Anytime you look at women in those two categories, that means you don't understand the concept of sexual duplicity. I talk about this in detail in my book, Who Said Again. To pull out my 1 to 5 scale again, see, I rate women sexuality on a scale from 1 to 5. A total, genuine good girl, that's what I call a 5. That's a 5. If a woman only engages in sex with a man who's her husband or fiance, I call that a 5. In my book, Who Said Again, that's a 5. On the exact opposite end, if a woman makes it clear she's totally down for multiple episodes of short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex, that's a 1. That's a 1. If a woman doesn't in any way, shape, or form, she never tries to hide, deny, or camouflage the fact that she indulges in frequent episodes of short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex, that's a 1. What I basically argue in my book, Who Said Again, is that most women, only a small percentage of women, are 1s and 5s. Only a small percentage of women in society are 1s and 5s. If I had to give a rough estimate, an unscientific estimate, I would say no more than 5% of women in society are 5s, and I would say no more than 15 to 20% of women in society are 1s. All the rest of the women, the remaining 75 to 80% of the women in society are either 2s, 3s, or 4s. 2s, 3s, or 4s. And going back to this client, his problem was he realized that Lisa, if I had to put it in my numerical scale, he thought Lisa was a 5, only to realize she was more of a 4. He thought she was a 5, and she ended up being more of a 4. A 4 is a woman that mostly only engages in sex with men within the context of marriage or within the context of a long-term monogamous relationship, but occasionally, she'll give in to the seduction of a master seducer and engage in casual sex. That's what I call, in my book, Who Said Again, a 4. And that left him jaded, man. That left him jaded. What did I say in that video I did earlier this year? I said, most of the guys who tend to suffer from what's known in the manosphere as red pill rage, I said, a guy never experiences red pill rage because of 1s and 5s. Never. No guy experiences red pill rage because of 1s and 5s. The number one time guys experience red pill rage is usually, like this guy, my consultation client, is when they thought either an individual woman or a group of women were fives, but then they later realized that those women who they thought were fives ended up being twos, threes, or fours. I'm running out of time, so I got to stop this. But here's the thing, man. You got to quit being judgmental like that, man. I've said many times, man, the days of thinking you're going to find a virgin to marry, those days are over, motherfucker. Those days are over. Finding a virgin is like finding a needle in a haystack in today's society. Those days are over. And even pushing virgins to the side, finding a woman that has never, ever engaged in at least a handful of episodes of casual sex, you a naive motherfucker. And if you passing judgment on women who have indulged in, ain't every woman who indulged in casual sex a slut. That's your problem. Y'all think any woman who's engaged in 2 or more episodes of short-term non-monogamous casual sex is a slut. Y'all need to quit being so judgmental. That's what's wrong with you motherfuckers. Y'all need to wake up. Y'all need to wake the fuck up and become more realistic. And become more accepting of women's true nature. Otherwise, you're going to be experiencing red pill rage from now to the day you 6 feet under. I got over that shit years ago, man. I talk about that in Who Said It Again. Y'all need to pick up, if you don't own it already, related to this video, the one book of mine you need to pick up if you don't own it already is my book, Who Said It Again. Who Said It Again. That's the book y'all need to read or get the audiobook version and listen to. That's my book that centers on sexual duplicity, the sexual duplicity of women, verbal seduction, and erotic dirty talk. All right, that's all I got for you today. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God!
God, man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. Yeah. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, come on now.